His mother died. On the day of the funeral, his brother changed the locks on their family home. Liam stood on the porch, the cold November air biting at his cheeks, the cheap black suit feeling like a costume. He inserted the old brass key, the one he'd carried for 20 years, and it stopped, refusing to turn. He tried again, jiggling it, a frantic, desperate motion. Nothing. The sound of the deadbolt sliding on the other side made him freeze. The door opened a few inches, held by a new security chain. Through the gap, he saw his older brother, Mark. Mark's face was a closed door of its own. He was not wearing a suit. He was in a faded sweatshirt. "You need something, Liam?" he asked, his voice flat, devoid of the grief that should have bound them together. Liam held up the key. "It does not work." Mark's eyes flickered to the key and then back to Liam's face. "I know. I changed them." The words landed like stones. "Why?" Liam whispered, the question barely audible over the wind. "It's my house now," Mark said, his voice hard. "Mom left it to me. The lawyer has the papers. It's better this way. Cleaner. Cleaner." Their mother's scent still lingered in the air. Her favorite coat was probably still on the hook inside. Liam's hand tightened around the key until the teeth dug into his palm. He'd made one attempt to fix things earlier that day, trying to talk to Mark after the service. He'd approached his brother, opened his mouth to suggest they go through their mother's things together, but Mark had just turned and walked away. Now, this was the explanation. There was no together. Liam was being erased. He had a choice. He could walk away, swallowed by a second wave of grief, the loss of his brother, the loss of his past. Or he could fight. He looked past Mark, at the hallway where they measured their height on the doorframe, at the stairs he'd fallen down as a child. This was not just wood and plaster. It was his life. "You see, not do this," Liam said, his voice finding a strength born of pure rage. "You see, not just lock me out." Mark's face tightened. "Watch me." He started to close the door. In a blind panic, Liam shoved it. The chain strained, the wood groaning. "I live here too," he yelled, the lie tasting like ash. He had not lived there in years, but in that moment, it felt like the truest thing in the world. Mark did not yell back. He simply disappeared for a moment and returned with a piece of paper, slapping it against the glass of the small window next to the door. It was a formal notice. A restraining order. Mark had planned this. He had seen this coming and had armed himself not with arguments, but with the law. Liam stared at the document, his name typed in stark black letters. He was not just locked out. He was an intruder. The choice was no longer his to make. It had been made for him. This was war. Liam's choice fueled a cold, burning fire inside him. He hired a lawyer, a man with tired eyes who spoke of probate courts and discovery motions in a monotone. The initial consultation drained half his savings. The retainer took the rest. His life narrowed to a single, obsessive point, the house. He spent his nights digging through old emails from his mother, searching for any hint that she intended for the house to be shared. He found nothing but loving messages that now felt like betrayals. Every attempt to move forward only dragged him deeper into the mud. He contested the will, claiming Mark had exerted undue influence on their mother in her final, weakened days. The accusation felt vile as he said it, but the alternative, accepting that his mother had willingly cut him out, was unthinkable. the legal battle became a spiral. Mark's lawyer would file a motion, Liam's lawyer would file a counter-motion. Fees piled up like dead leaves. Liam started taking extra shifts at his job, the exhaustion hollowing out his face. His friends tried to intervene. "It's just a house, man," one said over a beer. "Let it go." Liam slammed his glass on the table. "It's not about the house. It's about what's right." But he no longer sounded sure. The conflict bled into every corner of his life. His girlfriend, who had held him while he cried after the funeral, now looked at him with a weary frustration. "This hatred," she told him one night, her voice soft but firm, "it's changing you, Liam. You do not talk about your mom anymore. You only talk about him." He had no answer for her. A week later, she was gone. That was the day he hit his first real bottom. Sitting in his silent, empty apartment, surrounded by legal papers he could not afford, he felt a crushing defeat. He had lost his mother, his home, his savings, and now, the woman he loved. He was losing the war. That evening, his lawyer called. There was a new complication. Mark was countersuing. Not for money, but for something far worse. He was suing Liam for defamation of character, citing the undue influence claim. He's saying you publicly and maliciously damaged his reputation during a time of grief, the lawyer explained, his voice holding a new note of warning. If he wins, Liam, you'll be financially ruined. You'll owe him everything. The floor fell away. Mark was not just trying to keep him out of the house. He was trying to burn down what little was left of his life. Desperate, Liam fired his lawyer and decided to dig for a different kind of truth. He drove to the off-site storage unit his mother had rented years ago, a place filled with forgotten furniture and boxes of papers. He spent a weekend in the cold, dusty space, prying open sealed containers, his hands raw. And then he found it. Tucked away in a tin box labeled "Household," he found a thick folder of unopened, official-looking envelopes. They were from a mortgage company. And they were all past due notices. He tore one open, his heart pounding. Then another, and another. The truth was a punch to the gut. His mother had not owned the house. The bank did. She had taken out a massive reverse mortgage years ago and had been falling behind on the payments. The final notice, dated 2 weeks before her death, stated that the property would be foreclosed upon and seized. A wave of sickening adrenaline washed over him. This was it. This was the weapon he needed. Mark had not inherited a home, he had inherited a massive, unpayable debt. And he had hidden it. Mark's claim to the house was a lie, a fraud built on a foundation of debt. This changed everything. For the first time in months, Liam felt a surge of power, a sense of righteous victory. He did not call a lawyer. He drove straight to the house, the foreclosure notices clutched in his hand. He did not care about the restraining order. He pounded on the door, shouting Mark's name. When his brother finally opened it, holding a phone as if ready to call the police, Liam shoved the papers into his chest. "You did not inherit a house," he spat, his voice trembling with triumph. "You inherited a catastrophe. You lied." Mark looked down at the papers, his face pale. He did not look surprised. He looked tired. "You should not have found those," he said quietly. Then came the turn, the final, shocking twist of the knife. "I did not lie, Liam," Mark said, his voice heavy with a resignation that chilled Liam to the bone. "I made a deal." He explained that in their mother's last week, She had confessed everything to him, ashamed and terrified of leaving her sons with nothing but debt. So Mark, using the power of attorney she had given him, had gone to the bank. He had negotiated a deal. He would assume the entire debt himself, liquidating his own retirement savings to pay it off. In exchange, the bank would transfer the title solely to his name. The new locks, the will, the lawyer, it was not an act of greed. It was the frantic, clumsy execution of a desperate plan to shield them both from ruin. "She made me promise," Mark whispered, his voice finally breaking. "She did not want you to know how bad it was. She did not want your last memory of her to be of this failure. I was trying to protect you." Liam stood on the porch, the cold wind whipping around him, the victory papers in his hand now feeling like ash. He had not uncovered a crime. He had uncovered a sacrifice. He had spent the last 6 months and every dollar he had trying to destroy a man who was quietly saving him. He was not the victim. He was the fool. In that crushing silence, Liam finally saw it. He looked at his brother's exhausted face and the pieces clicked into place, forming a picture not of malice, but of misguided protection. The real betrayal was not the changed lock. It was the silence. Mark had not trusted him with the truth. He had decided to carry the burden alone, treating Liam not as a partner, but as a child to be shielded. The fight had never been about the house. It was about brotherhood. It was about being seen as an equal. Liam's shoulders slumped. The rage that had fueled him for months evaporated, leaving behind a hollow ache. He did not need to win the house anymore. He just needed to end the war. He let the foreclosure notices fall from his hand, scattering on the porch steps. He looked Mark in the eye. "You should have told me," he said. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact, a quiet lament for the trust they had lost. "We should have carried it together." Mark flinched, as if the words had physically struck him. For the first time, he looked not like a gatekeeper, but like a brother drowning in a burden he had insisted on carrying alone. Liam took a step back, off the porch, surrendering the ground he had fought so hard for. "It's your house, Mark," he said, and the words no longer tasted like defeat. They tasted like freedom. "You keep it." He turned and walked away. He did not look back. The next day, he instructed his lawyer to drop the lawsuit and the defamation countersuit. He sold his car to pay the final legal fees. He was left with almost nothing, but he felt lighter than he had in years. 2 weeks later, a simple white envelope arrived at his small, rented apartment. Inside was a single, old brass key. There was no note. None was needed. The house was sold a few months later. Neither of them could afford to keep it, and neither of them wanted to live in a monument to their pain. But they met on the day of the sale and stood on the sidewalk, watching the new family move in. They did not talk much. They just stood together, two brothers sharing a silence that was no longer heavy with anger, but filled with a quiet, fragile understanding. Liam had lost his inheritance, his savings, and a year of his life. But standing there, he realized what he had finally won back. He had learned that some doors are meant to close, and that forgiveness is not about getting a key to the past. It's about having the strength to finally walk away from the door.